You're tuned in to Career Currency with Kareem Perez, a podcast for people who are interested in unlocking their potential and increasing their professional value. Here's your host, Kareem Perez.
All right, welcome y'all to another episode of the Career Currency podcast. It's the podcast for people who are interested in unlocking their potential and increasing their professional value. We bring you the best marketers, the best influencers and brand builders in the game who's going to share with you career advice and information on how you can attract opportunities, make more money, and thrive in the digital economy, which you know is booming and just going out of control right now. I'm your host, Kareem Perez, and today we have a very special guest who has an amazing, blessed name, which means the generous one. The reason I know that is because his name is also Kareem, okay? Kareem Bonner, brother. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kareem. It's really cool to talk to another Kareem during this podcast, so let's rock it.
All right, man. So maybe start off by telling people, so you're a senior digital strategist at Toronto Global,
Correct.
right? And maybe start off by telling people a little bit about your day-to-day experience, what you do in the digital space, and really I want to dig deeper into how you got into the space and, kind of how you started your career.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for having me on here, Kareem. I mean, I'm very excited to be on this podcast. My first one, and, I have a lot to say. So,
Nice.
Yeah, I'll tell you all about me right now in this
Let's get
next little chapter, right? So, Kareem Bonner. Yeah, I've been working at Toronto Global for just under 2 years as of January. So I actually got hired before the pandemic, right? So I got caught into there in running their social media, their search engine optimization campaigns and strategies, and as well as website optimization. So what that means, audience, for those that don't know, is that I work with other companies and as well as digital agencies to help enhance our website. Because the big thing about the pandemic that we have learned is that businesses that a lot of them have gone out is because they don't have any sort of web presence, right? So let's not even talk about just social media, because that is the cool thing that everyone highlights. But if you don't have a website, right, to drive people to somewhere, right, they don't know who you are, right? So that's why I think my role is very important at Toronto Global, because our goal at our organization is that we're looking to get international businesses to expand to the Toronto region. So it's not just downtown Toronto. You're also looking from out east, as far out as Durham region, to as out west as Mississauga, Brampton area, north as in, you're looking at Richmond Hill, Markham, and a few others.
Right.
But we're trying to get people to just not only know that this is the right place for your business, but to also highlight the great community and the cultural diversity that's in the Toronto region. So, I mean, in a nutshell, it's a really cool role, because the part of it why I thrive in my role at Toronto Global is because I love the Toronto region. I mean, not just about the Raptors. I like the diversity. Okay. I like the Kareems here as well. But there's just so much to highlight about why this is the place, one of the best places in the world for people to not only do their business, but to also grow and thrive in.
Right. So I just wanted to circle back on so you're talking about the GTA, not just the core downtown,
right,
but you're talking about the whole GTA and highlighting those different areas for businesses of where they can thrive.
Correct. Because, for example, Durham, for a lot of people, Durham is this far out country, which it's not. Right. But people don't recognize that in Durham, for example, Amazon actually opened up one of their distribution centers over the last couple months, right? So, yes, downtown Toronto, everybody thinks of, when you say Toronto region or GTA, downtown, because that's where, all the big businesses, financial institutions are. But as well, you have your sporting teams, you have the Raptors, you have, Toronto FC, you have the Blue Jays. Out east, in Durham, you have the Oshawa Generals, which is one of the biggest junior hockey programs in all of Canada,
Facts, yeah.
right? But the rest of the world doesn't know about the Oshawa Generals, right? They know about Toronto.
Yeah.
Right.
That's interesting. And also they just built a casino out there too.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's almost done and ready to go.
Correct.
So it's definitely booming, and all the GTA areas are starting to really expand.
Correct.
Also, so you mentioned web presence.
Yep.
Right. You mentioned social media.
Yep.
So talk about like, some of the things that you do, like in terms of communication, marketing, highlighting diversity. How do you use those platforms to showcase Toronto?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think the pandemic, you have had to really step back and look at what's going on, right? So I think obviously with the whole George Floyd thing, incident that happened, like that obviously had a big significant impact in the Black community, but I felt like it had a wake up call for the rest of the world, right? So I think at Toronto Global, like one of the things that I do on a day-to-day basis is that first part of the morning is I'm essentially going online. I'm going on Twitter, I'm going on LinkedIn, I'm going on Facebook, I'm going on Instagram, and I'm looking at what are the top trending items.
Right.
But then also we also plan out a social media calendar where we highlight, what are the good parts of the Toronto region, right? But then we're also aware from a social perspective of, things that we got to be aware of, right? So the one thing I want to say to the Black community too is that I know the racial and social injustices, it's really easy to focus on what's happened within our community, but we have to also be aware what's going on with everyone else, right? So everyone else it's not just the Indigenous, it's not just the Asian community, it's also women, and it's also, there's been age discrimination, all these things that have gone on. But I think now it's like our company with a whole bunch of others, like we're trying to continue to not only, highlight, why our business is good and why like the Toronto region for us is the place to be, but we're also trying to highlight that, the diversity and being treated as one community, in our area of the world, like we're one of the best. Mm-hmm. We're not perfect. We're all aware of that. And but we're trying.
Okay. So you kind of bring all the trends to the forefront.
Yeah.
And then strategize on how to leverage those and communicate them through the different channels.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
That's dope. So how did you get into marketing? How did you get into digital? Like, I don't think there was like school when you first got in, because I know when I started there was no like specific courses.
Well, I'll say this. So when I got into it, right, like I was actually working at a company. It was called Dell Computer Corporation.
Okay.
I got into there after university and I needed a job, right? So I got into there in their call center. So their call center, I was just transferring calls. And then one day I was asked to work at the Dell Direct store at Scarborough Town Center, which had, when you're selling your computer and products, you got to use a website, right? So a lot of times when I was on the website, I noticed all these different errors that were happening, or the navigation and usability, it wasn't the best. So I'd always be giving feedback to the online marketing team on how to make the website better. Mm-hmm. And then eventually a position opened up on that online marketing team. And that's where I actually got my jump into what you call digital marketing. Right. So just to put it into perspective for everybody, like I'm not 29, unfortunately. I'll leave it at that. But like I was at an age where digital marketing was slowly becoming a thing, right? So I got on Facebook eventually in the late 2000s, and that happened because one of my best friends went to Western, and to keep in contact with his friends, who were my friends eventually.
Right.
Facebook was the place to be. And then Twitter came, obviously during the Obama presidential election. Twitter was a big thing. And then years later, obviously you have Instagram and all these different things. But I felt like when I was transitioning from a call center role to sales to marketing, that when I got into marketing, like I knew how to action things, but in terms of understanding the art form of it, I think later on in my chapters, that's where I kind of took things to the next level, right? But I eventually knew that digital marketing was a thing, because now you're in a situation now when people are buying different products. Most of the times people don't even see a sales rep, nothing. They go online and they purchase their items, or they see it through a social media post on Instagram or whatever. They click, they buy, they move on, and that's it, right?
Yeah, or they might just see somebody like wearing something and then Google it, right? Or just kind of like, oh, I see those shoes are sick or whatever. I'm gonna kind of look them up.
Yeah,
just like that dope shirt that you have on. I like that.
Thank you. And vice versa.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, let's talk about. So what did you study? Did you go to school? Did you study marketing or business or anything like that?
So I think that's where my chapter is very interesting. So when I went to school, I went to York University.
Right.
I was majoring in sociology with a minor in business administration.
Okay.
Right. But at the time, digital marketing, there was nothing there. It was just marketing.
Right. Yeah.
So like traditional old school marketing, the flyers or the
like
poster
TV,
boards.
radio,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about skills a bit, right?
Yeah.
Like I know you're big on upskilling, right, and
Yep.
staying sharp in general. So when it comes to digital skills and some of the platforms you mentioned, what are some of the skills that you think that somebody getting into marketing now, or even staying ahead of the game in marketing, what are some of the skills that you're seeing now, and maybe even like future trends? With all the technology, AI, stuff like that, that's kind of popping off now too.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to anybody right now that even though I've been in digital marketing now for over 15 plus years, right? Like things are changing on a daily basis, right? So for example, the way you post, the best ways to post on like LinkedIn or these different channels, right? You have one algorithm that tells you today, post at these times, but then tomorrow it's completely different. So during the pandemic, I think the big thing it's highlighted is the fact that the trends that were in then,
right,
they totally went out the window once everybody was working at home and staying at home and being, unfortunately isolated during the entire time. But I think also before the pandemic, the one thing I did realize was that, a lot of people want to get into digital marketing, right? But I think a lot of people don't know what they truly want to do, right?
Right.
So for example, like digital marketing, everyone talks about, I want to be a social media manager or a social media specialist. Okay, but that's not all of digital marketing.
Right.
You have search engine optimization, you have, CRM, you have, building a website, and some future trends you're talking, current and future trends I see happening. If you don't know how to build, like to do basic coding today, you're going to need to know it down the road, right? Because it's not mandatory for a lot of positions probably over the last couple months. But from what I've seen talking to people in the different industries, Kareem, is that you're seeing when people are looking for marketing manager roles, they're looking for people that know coding. They're looking for people that know like how to use Adobe, Photoshop, and all these different things, right? So it's like, I think for a lot of companies, when they're hiring people, they make essentially a laundry list of everything that they should know. But I would tell somebody that if they were to focus in on some key skills, I would say the following. I'd say number one, do Google Analytics or do Google Academy.
Okay.
Right? Because having a certification in Google Analytics, that's always you're gonna need it, right? Because any sort of decent company either uses Google Analytics or Omniture, which is more for the high enterprise businesses.
Yeah.
But you need to know how to do analytics. That's one.
Okay.
Number two, I would say even if you went to school for basket weaving, I think going to different schools such as like York University, University of Toronto, Ryerson, they have programs and certifications where you can learn the art form of doing digital marketing, right? So you could go for maybe a digital marketing certification,
right?
Or you can even break it down where maybe you don't want to be a social media manager, but you might want to be a person that writes content for a website, right? So maybe doing a marketing and communication certification comes into play, right? I would do coding.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Coding for sure. So even if you were to do it through a university or to even learn on YouTube, like surprisingly YouTube has a lot of good content. Right. So if you want to learn how to talk to someone effectively on how to dress and stuff or how to do basic coding, YouTube has so many videos out there that you can learn on how to do whatever you want within a certain time. And I'd also tell people too, like you have to also learn to build relationships with people. Right. So
that's a big one.
Yeah. So if you're in digital marketing and you don't have a digital marketing profile on key channels, so I would tell somebody focus on maybe 2 or 3 that you're going to be active on. So from a professional side, I say you need LinkedIn.
Okay. Yeah.
From a personal side, I would probably say, choose between Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, depending on your age group, and Twitter is not a bad one as well. Right. Understand on how people use those platforms to connect and tell their stories with their audience. But then I would also tell somebody too that you have to continuously be upping your game. Just because you take one course today, you're going to have to be well invested and doing courses for an indefinite period of time. So for myself, even though, like I said earlier, I've been in digital marketing for 15 years, plus years, like I'm in my third certification at the University of Toronto, where I'm doing a certification in multimedia storytelling and content marketing, because I'm learning on how to write better content with saying less, but saying more. Right. Because we talked about before the podcast about people's attention span, right? If you're writing something too long, they're gone and they're never coming back to your platform or to your website. But if you write clear, precise content and you tell a beautiful story, they'll want to learn more about you, and they'll build a connection and a relationship with your business, not just from a short term, but from long term as well.
That's some amazing tips, right? So analytics, coding, upskilling in specific areas, depending on your interest, and then just having like a clear digital presence. LinkedIn for sure with business and networking, and then kind of choose some of the other ones.
And I would also add one last thing. Learning on how to do public speaking and presentation, I think, is one skill that a lot of people overlook, because I know people, and I had challenges in my early years too, presenting with people, but I learned by taking a course like that you learn on how to inspire and make your presentations. You take it from maybe a B level to like an A+ level.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's like key to what you said, is that no matter where you are, right, you can always get better, right? And one of the things that we always talk about at the Tech Effect is having a growth mindset, right? So that's one of our values, where it's like, regardless if you're just starting out or you're a mentor, or you've been in the game for ages, is to have a mindset where it's like, how can I improve? Right. And how can I take that next step? So that's a big key. You talked about presentation, right? The presentation skills and speaking, and that's like a big thing that I agree with. Do you believe in imposter syndrome? Have you ever gone through it? Because a lot of people are like, I don't like speaking in front of groups. I find like that's a big one.
I wouldn't say I have imposter syndrome. I know of the term, and I think one of the students that I've been mentoring did bring it up. What I would say about the imposter syndrome is that I think it comes, from my experience, it comes down to liking who you are and being confident in who you are, right? So I think, and we can chat about it more later in this podcast, but like I think for like the racial and social injustices, for example, I know for a fact from me, I know I become someone of a leader in the community, even though I didn't want to be. I just spoke about something that it's dear to my heart, and it's been an issue pretty much the course of my entire life, right?
Okay, what is it? Let's talk about it.
No, I mean, I think the racial and social injustices, and like, how can the Black community, thrive? I mean, it's been something that, has really hit me almost all my life, right? And I think from my end, like, just my background is that I'm not just what you call the traditional Black person, right? According to what society says, right? So if you look at me, you probably say I play basketball, and like I was an elite track runner.
Wait, how tall are you?
I'm about 6'2".
Okay, yeah.
Right? So I was okay at basketball. I was actually pretty good at track, but those were not my sports that I thrived in the most.
Right.
The sports I thrived in the most was actually swimming, martial arts, and and hockey. Hockey was my big one, right? Because at one point when I was playing hockey, like I wanted to get a scholarship to play at the University of Michigan, and then get an education to be in law, and then move forward, right? But I experienced a lot of racial inequalities at the time. And I think also too, it was just, if you were not connected with, or if you weren't accepted in a certain cultural group, right? It's very hard to stay inspired or want to play a sport because it's not fun.
Right.
And you're like, man, I just don't want this tension. You know what I mean? So I think for me, main reason why I think, like for the whole George Floyd thing, for example, I think why I get mad at it too is just because, 8 minutes and 46 seconds, like, I don't know what those other police officers were thinking, but I also felt very sad for the people that were filming it and were saying stuff, because you also saw that they were scared that they were going to get shot or something.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But I also got mad for another different reason, which is for a lot of people, it was like, wow, like this happens. And like, oh my goodness, like I didn't know.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, how did you not know? Like I've been around for how long? And like, this has been going on forever. It's just that, I think with the pandemic, it escalated things further because everybody was sitting at home and you had moments to, sit there and analyze what really happened. You could look at the videos again. Essentially we saw a homicide
right. Yeah.
live in front of our eyes. And I think from my end, it was just a sparking point why, I knew I had to do more for the Black community, because I know for myself, like I've complained over the years because you just don't know any better too, right? Like Black community's not doing this, or, unfortunately people of the dominant group are not helping out doing that. But it's like, what are you doing right now to make a difference,
yeah.
right?
And talk about like, did you feel like it was more important at that point to share your story? Did you, when you were growing up and facing these racial inequalities, did you speak up at the time, or did you suppress some of that because it was like, oh, hey, this is how it is? Because I know I felt that way to a certain degree, right? When I looked back and I said, okay, started to reflect on some moments in my career, or like some of my schooling or some of my experiences, it was like, some of that was normalized,
Right.
And when I look back, I was like, nah, that's not normal.
No.
And part of it was, okay, now you mentioned people that saying, oh, I didn't know this existed. Well, that's why we have to have these conversations and tell these stories and like be very vocal about it,
right?
So that other people will know, and people that are also in that same boat can feel comfortable that they're not alone.
Right. I mean, I think there's two examples that stick out in my mind. And I know some people are going to feel a certain way, but it is what it is. I always questioned the hockey community. Here it was, I was your teammate, and we're supposed to be brothers, no matter the color of your skin. But it was like, there were certain cases where like, they didn't have my back, I felt, right? I felt like, because my dad wasn't going out and drinking with some of the other hockey parents, right? So there's something wrong with him. Like he was being the best dad he could be. You want to see his kid improve doing a sport and be engaged, right? He didn't want to get drunk because, my family has also a bit of a history with alcoholism, right? And my dad just is not a drinker. I'm not really much of a drinker myself. Yes, I still like the odd Corona and the vodka soda, but I'll only have one glass and that's about it, right? So it was the hockey teammates. I didn't feel like my hockey teammates, my coaches had my backs when I really needed it the most. Still have some resentment towards a lot of them, right? Like, I hope they're all doing well, but in terms of us being best friends, like, no, that's not happening in our lifetime. There's that angle. But then there's also the Black perspective where, and this is a harder one, because it's like, I just want to do good at school. I just wanted to play my sports, enjoy my life, get along with everybody. But like being called an Uncle Tom by the Black community, I'm not Black enough because I don't have dark skin. It was like, can't win here, can't win there. So it was like a lot of it I had to kind of suppress. And I don't think, my parents, I mean, my dad spoke about it a bit, but like my mom, not really until maybe the last little while. But like, I think for me, it's just like coming to grips with everything that happened. But I also understand where everyone else is coming from at the time too. Because back in the, the 90s, 80s and 90s, again, my age, but like, you just didn't have this, you didn't have these conversations. Like a Black person playing hockey, like he should be playing basketball. Like, what is he doing? Yeah. What is he doing playing this sport? He's not Black. And it's like, no, like that was the beginning of Black athletes excelling just beyond basketball, football, and all these different things, right? But I think also the Black community side, seeing somebody maybe doing something that's not considered Black, right. I think it threw a lot of people off, because it's like, that's different. That's kind of weird. So like, rather than maybe ask the questions, maybe it caused them to be more on the defensive side, So
that's interesting. So what would you? So you talked about like in affecting change as close to yourself, like taking action.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you've started doing or you're doing now to support the Black community and make change and have that impact?
Well, besides being on this podcast, I would also say like I've helped some in the Black communities get connected with people to help them get jobs,
Right.
which in one case, the person's a good friend of mine now. Like I took the time to meet up with him, gave him some tips, and that's how you and I actually met too.
Absolutely.
Right? There's been that. At York University, I'm on their Black mentoring session program, where I'm a mentor to three students. So I'm just helping, provide mentorship in terms of how to, excel not only in school but also postgraduate. And then also I'm looking to help them, properly network into the professional circle. Mm-hmm. So even if they're looking to not be a digital marketer, they're looking, let's say, be a psychologist or a lawyer or something.
Right.
I do know people in the Black community, there's people in general that can help them get to their goal, right? And then I think the big thing for me too is that I'm reading more about history, right? Not just about Black history, but like the Indigenous community. There's a lot that I'm not proud to say it, that I need to look at again, because it's just like when I went to Vancouver a couple of months ago, like I saw a lot of prejudice and like what the Indigenous community goes through. And it's like, man, it's not just our community that's struggling, but there are many others that are struggling out there too. And then also too, I'm trying to also listen to more people from the dominant culture, because I think it's easy to say, well, the people from the dominant culture don't care, but a lot of them do care. But I think a lot of them are also having a hard time maybe saying their piece, because they're afraid of saying the wrong thing. Right. So I think one thing that I hear a lot of is like, I have Black friends. It's like, my response to that is, bad start. Right. That's not getting you any points, but why did you say that? Right. Or the other comment is, I don't want to say the wrong thing. Again, you said the wrong thing by saying you don't want to say the wrong thing. Right. So why don't you ask a question? The right people will answer your question and be there to support you. The wrong people, guess what? In the Black community too, we're not perfect ourselves. So if those people have an issue trying to get an answer to something where you're trying to help our community, then you know what? Those people have the problem, not you.
Yeah, that's, kudos for that work, right? And definitely, I'm glad we were connected so we can do that work together.
Yeah.
Because, through the tech effect, it's really about creating diversity within the digital space. And, a few of our key pillars are Black talent, female talent in tech, new Canadians is a big one, right? So new to the country. And then obviously there's like a huge mentorship piece in there. So you mentioned mentoring with York University and some of the students, and really it's about like opportunities and access, right? So having access to opportunities that you never knew existed, but also being able to plug people in to different situations where you're like, hey, I know somebody that can actually help you.
Yeah.
So talk about how important is mentorship in a career perspective, and also just like a life perspective. And do you have a mentor? Because you mentor people, but do you have a mentor actively or previously?
Yeah, you know what? I think mentorship, like me mentoring people, is something I've only gotten into more in the last year or so.
Okay.
In terms of people that mentor me, I think I've always had mentors, but it's not the official titles. I think one person that really mentors me probably more than anybody is my wife.
Okay.
Right. Because like for her, like, she sees that I've had opportunities to be better, right? Like in terms of the way I talk to people, if I'm feeling a certain way, she should be a psychologist, but she's also gone through a lot of different experiences herself. But like she helps me to understand people better. Right. And that's something that I think I thought I was always good at, but a lot of times I realized, like, stepping back for a moment, like, you know what, you're not necessarily the best at maybe speaking to people at times, or maybe at times too, when you're talking a lot, maybe you should take more of that time to just step back, listen,
right.
and, say something very short and sweet. Right. my parents in a lot of ways were mentors too. I think they did the best they can. But in terms of like helping me navigate through, I think a lot of general life stuff, there were certain things where I think this is also a Black community thing too, where I think parents need to learn to have more of the financial responsibility conversations a lot earlier, right? So the old movie, it was called Baby Boy.
Baby Boy, that's one of my favorite movies.
Yep. Tyrese and Snoop Dogg
and
Vin Rhames. But the line I always remember in that movie, Kareem, is Vin Rhames talked about guns and butter.
Yeah, guns and butter.
Right? And it's like, why am I only hearing that now when I'm about to go to university? Like, why wasn't I hearing that like when I was a lot younger? Right? And I think if my parents had more of the financial talks, I'm not saying that it didn't work out. It did. But I don't think I would have made as many mistakes as I did. Because I think obviously in the I wouldn't even say Black community, people in general, like as soon as you go to university, you have those vendors like, yeah, you need a credit card. You want to buy that new pair of Jordans? Hey, here's $500. And then in less than a day, you are $500 in debt, right? And then you're paying $1 a month. So that $500 that you owe, instead of it taking, let's say, less than a year to pay off, it's taking you decades to pay off $500.
Right. Yeah. So financial literacy is a big one. But so just to be clear, so in your career, you never had like a specific mentor per se, like a structured relationship.
I've had on and off.
Okay.
But I think part of the reason why too it's been on and off is because maybe there were times with some of the mentors. I remember at one of my old companies, a person was mentoring me, and then behind my back, wasn't talking the nicest about me.
Right.
So that kind of turned me off the mentorship a bit.
Okay.
And then a place that really had good mentorship too was actually when I was at KPMG as well. One of the directors, she was really nice. She just gave me a lot of tips on how to maybe navigate through the business and how to maybe help my team out more and stuff. But I think you do need a mentor, especially when you're working at large corporations, because I think the big thing is that it's easy to focus in on, okay, I want to be a director tomorrow, but there's a lot you need to learn to become a director. You got to learn how to be, you have to be good with people, time management. How do you deal with adversity, right? So some of your staff might not be performing up to par, or, you have to give a negative review. That sounds all easy to do, but like you need somebody besides a book to tell you on how to do it, right? So I think for me, one of my mentors when it comes to maybe a company now, I think my current director at Toronto Global, her name's Julia. I think she's really a good mentor. The thing I like about her is that she's very good at what she does. She's very knowledgeable about the foreign direct investment industry. I mean, she's very caring and kind, but the way she speaks to people, like her energy and stuff. And I think there's moments where like, I would like everybody I deal with to have that sort of energy and vibe. Like you go into the room with her, you want to have a conversation with her because she knows, like she looks like she's always confident and prepared, and like good or bad, like she just knows on how to do her thing, right? So we have one-on-ones. I mean, we've had, good and bad, but like I respect her and I just learn a lot from her, and like, she's helped me to do things better. Like she's also the one too that was very supportive for me to go back and do a third certification at the University of Toronto, right? And in a lot of ways too, like, I mean, what I learned at University of Toronto, like I can help the team and the company, take it to the next level, right? But I think also from a life perspective, I think besides my wife, I think and my parents, my sister has been there too a bit, but like also like some of my martial art instructors.
Okay.
This one guy's name is Arthur Zuka, and like he really helped me navigate through jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu is really hard. Has a high dropout rate. Like 90% of people drop out within the first 6 months of training. Once you get to blue, you get another high volume of people that will drop out. But he was always about how to train properly, have the right attitude, helping others, and like don't be training for the belts. You're training to just enjoy the journey. and everything else will take care of itself.
Okay, so that's dope because, when I went on your LinkedIn, right, and we connected, I peeked your LinkedIn. I was like, okay, I see you rolling on the mat, doing your jujitsu thing.
Yeah.
And then as I got to, kind of learn more about your personal brand and some of the things that you have online, I also saw you, I think I saw you power cleaning, right? Because, I'm big on CrossFit, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things for me is that CrossFit changed me physically, but also changed me mentally.
Right.
And it changed my mindset in terms of, okay, if I'm going to be lifting, going hard, doing these crazy workouts and pushing to another extreme,
right,
then I can handle anything.
Right.
Right. And just like the whole idea of are you familiar with David Goggins?
Of course.
Yeah. So that whole like mindset, his book, Living with a Seal, like all of those things. Talk about how important that is, like it just in terms of high performance, right? That translates into your career, your work, and just like your overall personal life.
Yeah, I think training has always been a part of my life. And I think the pandemic exposed on how significant training is, right? So when everything shut down, I mean, it was hard. Like not being able to work out in a physical environment with your friends, with the equipment that you're used to. Like it was a huge adjustment period. Like I ended up doing George St. Pierre's Rush Fit workouts during that time period, and then just grabbing some weights wherever I could and just doing some general exercises. But to answer your question, I think training has helped me to become a better person in all walks of my life, right? So it not only allows me to be healthier, but also allows me to maybe reflect and de-stress a lot, right? So I think with jiu-jitsu, the main reason why I tell people to do it, it's because you have an ego, right? Everybody has an ego. I have an ego, you have an ego, but I notice, especially in the corporate world, egos are bigger than ever.
Right.
And in jiu-jitsu, you have to learn to not have an ego. Like you got to learn to fall 10,000 times until you start moving forward, right? So I take what I learned in jiu-jitsu, for example, and like if things are not going my way or if I made a mistake, I take a moment to kind of look at what I did right and wrong and then learn from it and try to make sure not to repeat it, right? From the weight training side, I think what it does for me, and I was doing a warm-up for snatches and power cleans and stuff, but that stuff teaches me on how to set goals. So if I want to, let's say, do a snatch of my own body weight, right? You have to start right from the beginning, like learning how to just do the bar itself. Right. That sounds
like progression.
Yeah. And here's the other thing too that people don't talk about. Everyone sees Michael Jordan or Steph Curry or Patrick Mahomes and Barack Obama. Like they see the end product, but nobody talks about how many times they fell on their face. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like Barack Obama, I think in the governor election, he lost 62% to like 38%. So he got blown out of the water. And talk about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan got cut from his high school basketball team. Right. You know what I mean? So it's like, how did these guys get to where they are now? They had to go through trials and tribulations. They had to get mentorship, and then they persevered. And I think that's where working out also is the most beneficial for me. So it teaches me how to persevere and knowing how to show up when you don't want to show up at all. So for me, imagine a Tuesday like this. You start your day at 5:30 a.m. You go to the gym. You come home. So you're home by about, let's say, 7:30. In the shower, you get something quick to eat. You're online at 8 o'clock. So you're working from 8 to, let's say, 5:30. You have an hour off. And then now you got to do night school for 2 hours. Not in a classroom, but in a bedroom when you're dead tired, right? You got to do that for 12 weeks, 13 weeks, right? Are you going to wait until you're going to have your perfect self to do all that all the time? No, it doesn't work that way. But you just learn to show up. And I think that's why, like in digital marketing, any walks of life I have, I don't think I'm the smartest. I don't think I'm the most talented. I'm consistent. That's it. And just always learning, wanting to learn more. And I think that's why I'm at where I'm at now. But I think I know I have a lot more ways to go. Like even with training, I've learned to know my limits, right?
Right.
Because sometimes even at work, like, I mean, you need help doing something. Sometimes I need help with a social media post where I don't have a clue on what to really write, or I've blanked out. Are you confident enough to just ask somebody to help you real quick? Like, that's what without training, I wouldn't be who I am, man, or where I'm at, right?
Yeah, so that I just want to reiterate a few keys that you drop right there, right? Because you talked about perseverance,
yep,
which is essentially necessary in all walks of life. You talked about consistency, right? And even when we talked about being on social or building your brand, or just building a business brand, right? Yep. Having that consistent content on whatever channel you are or whatever platform you are on, that's really what separates a lot, right? So so just like a lot of keys that you dropped there. I had this thought when you said earlier, when you're talking about mentorship and you're talking about different communities, the Black community, and some of the taboo subjects. Mm-hmm. Do you meditate?
I've been meditating a bit more.
Okay.
I'm not consistent at it.
Okay.
I think meditation, I think everybody needs it, but it's like I've always had a challenge slowing my brain down. But like, I'll tell you, the times I do meditate, like it does level you out, and it allows you to just do things more.
And what are your thoughts on therapy?
What part of therapy are you talking about?
Just in general, doing it. Is it necessary?
100%.
Go see one.
100%. Right? I mean, think of it this way, right? Like, I know I had a lot of mental challenges. I think, from my life and just maybe seeing what happened to George Floyd in that, because I know there were certain points where I couldn't sleep. It was just visually there, right? Also, people pleasing, doing all these different things. So we always had money, because a lot of companies, you have insurance where they give you a certain budget where you can get therapy. Right. I do therapy. I would tell you now that the Kareem that you maybe met a year ago versus now is totally different. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, I'm okay with not pleasing everybody. I'm not rude about it, but like, look, if we don't get along, right, wish you all the best, vice versa. But what's the point of us having this relationship where we're not getting anything out of it?
Right.
Versus before, where I'm trying to, like, oh my goodness, I got to make things happen like Clark Kent. No.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. But I think that's another taboo in the Black community from previous generations, where, the older generation, I feel like they were like, therapy is not for our community.
Right.
That's for other communities. I never agreed with that, because I felt like the other communities that were doing the mental therapy or therapy in general, that's why they're way ahead of us, because they address that they're not perfect. They have things they have to address, and it allows them to reset themselves and become a better version of themselves.
Yeah. And that actually goes back to the third key that you dropped that I kind of blanked out on, which was asking for help. Yeah. Right. Which is so important in whatever scenario you're in, is that asking for help and reflecting on ways to get better is only gonna help you improve. And I always talk about top performing athletes, or even any top performing individual. What they do is they self-reflect, they watch what they did, they watch their performances, they watch their presentations, and see how they can get better.
One thing I'd also say too, Kareem, is that I didn't mention it, but I also have a gratitude journal.
Okay.
That I write in every day, right? So the gratitude journal, it first came from my wife when she was doing a bit of therapy for a bit, but I picked up on it, and it's changed my life. Right? Because like, I had a challenge at one point where if I wrote in that for a year straight, I get to buy myself a little gift. Right? When I got married, my wife bought me that gift, so it went out the window. But I still, by the end of this year, I would have written in my journal for 365 days in a row and counting. Right? And through therapy and also talking to my wife, if I didn't hear that idea, I wouldn't maybe be more grateful of everything that's going on right now. Like, for example, we woke up today.
Right.
We're alive,
right.
Yeah.
You know? No, that's cool, man. That's cool. So yeah, a beautiful conversation. A lot of insights, a lot of keys. And, we have this portion where we just want to, like, get a little bit into some of the things that brought you here.
Yeah.
Right. So top tech recommendations.
Yep.
So really quickly, right. What's some of your top 1 or 2 book recommendations that changed you or you would recommend to somebody coming up in their career?
48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene.
Okay.
Also Sun Tzu and the Art of War.
Okay.
Those are the top 2 for sure.
Nice. Okay. And what about favorite podcasts aside from Career Currency? Obviously this episode, the 2 Kareems, is epic.
Yeah. From a jiu-jitsu community perspective, there's Chewy Jiu-Jitsu. From a life perspective is Lewis Howe's his podcast on being great.
Yeah, the greatness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Those are my 2. There's plenty more, but those are the 2 I probably listen to. I probably listen to Lewis Howe's the most because he has like Dwayne Wade and a few others that talk about various things. So
yeah, that's a dope podcast. And then are you familiar with Earn Your Leisure?
Yes.
EYL? Okay,
yes.
Cool. Yeah, because financial literacy, that's a huge one too,
Yes, that's
right?
a huge one. And the Financial Times, I also listen to on a daily basis because you should know about the economy and stuff.
Yeah. Big one. Favorite place to travel?
Cancun, Mexico is still my number 1.
Okay, cool. Favorite food?
Oh man, my favorite food would probably be it'd be sushi and steak.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, and then last question is advice to your younger self or somebody that's just starting their career.
Take things one day at a time, one step at a time. Don't look too far into the future. Don't take too much time looking into the past. Focus on the here and now.
Nice. All right, brother. Well, that's our time. Kareem, wow. I'm mind blown. I hope that we can continue this conversation. We can build together and work together again.
Yeah.
But definitely you dropped a lot of keys about mentorship, about how the Black community can thrive and build. A lot about the GTA and how you can use social media and your digital presence to communicate your message, communicate your value, and support businesses that are trying to do the same thing. He talked about therapy, he talked about mindset, which is key. And I just really want to thank you for taking the time to come through the podcast and have this conversation, man.
Well, thank you for having me, Kareem. It's good to talk to another Kareem. And, we can chat anytime you want. There's plenty of things to say. So
I appreciate it. Well, there you have it, y'all. Kareem Bonner, Senior Digital Marketing Specialist at Toronto Global. He's a husband. He's a mentor. He's a training jiu-jitsu physical mindset master. And I just really impressed by his overall demeanor, his attachment to the culture, and just like his ability to help others and give back. So again, thank you for coming through, brother. Thanks for tapping into the Career Currency podcast. You got a lot of keys on how you can unlock your potential, increase your professional value. So definitely take action on some of the information and ideas this brother was sharing with you. And we'll see y'all next time. All right. Peace.